The moment Angel Reese touched down in Atlanta, the silence around her wasn't just noticeable, it was deafening. Not because people didn't see the move, but because the league reacted in a way nobody could ignore. Free agents didn't hesitate, didn't wait, didn't even pretend to consider, they pivoted hard in the opposite direction. And at the exact same time, Chicago, the same franchise that had been dragged through the mud for 2 straight seasons as undesirable, dysfunctional, and a dead-end destination, suddenly became a magnet. Not slowly. Not cautiously. Instantly. Elite names lined up. Proven stars rushed in. No hesitation, no doubts, no second thoughts. That kind of overnight transformation doesn't happen because of weather, front office speeches, or market size, it happens when something toxic is removed. For 2 years, the narrative tried to convince everyone that Chicago was the problem. But the second Reese was gone, that illusion collapsed in real time. The league didn't issue a statement, the players did, with their decisions. And decisions don't lie. Because when professionals with options all make the same choice at the same time, that's not coincidence, that's clarity. And what that clarity exposed was brutal. Reese's numbers? On paper, they looked solid, double-doubles, rebounding titles, all-star nods. But the deeper you look, the more hollow it starts to feel. Volume isn't dominance. Rebounding your own missed shots over and over doesn't elevate a team, it inflates a stat line. And while those numbers stacked up, the wins didn't. The team didn't grow. The culture didn't stabilize. Instead, it deteriorated. Quietly at first, then publicly, then completely. Tension wasn't occasional, it was constant. Respect wasn't shaky, it was breaking. And when reports started surfacing, teammates frustrated, locker room fractures, public comments that crossed lines you don't cross in professional sports, it painted a picture that went far beyond basketball. And collapse is exactly what Chicago was experiencing, until they made the decision they clearly didn't want to make at first, but ultimately couldn't avoid. Because teams don't trade young all-stars for future picks unless something deeper is wrong. That's not strategy, that's escape. That's a franchise choosing peace over potential, chemistry over chaos, direction over distraction. And the moment that decision was made, everything changed faster than anyone expected. Veterans with resumes didn't need convincing, they showed up. Defensive anchors, elite playmakers, proven scorers, all arrived without hesitation, without concern, without fear of the environment that had scared players away before. That tells you everything. The issue was never the jersey, never the city, never the system, it was the energy inside the locker room. Meanwhile, Atlanta made their gamble. On paper, it sounds bold, adding a high rebound, high-energy player to a competitive roster. But chemistry doesn't show up on stat sheets, and history doesn't just reset because of a new jersey. You don't replace a championship-proven presence with an unproven one and expect immediate elevation, you risk destabilization. And the league noticed. Free agency didn't treat Atlanta like a destination, it treated it like a question mark. Because reputations travel faster than contracts. Players talk. Agents talk. And by the time deals are on the table, decisions have already been made behind closed doors. That's why while Chicago surged forward, Atlanta hesitated in place. And sitting right in the middle of all of this is the harshest reality of all. Impact isn't measured by how loud you are, how often you show up on highlight reels, or how strong your individual numbers look. It's measured by what happens when you leave. And when Reese left, Chicago didn't fall apart, they accelerated. They didn't struggle, they upgraded. They didn't hesitate, they rebuilt instantly. That's not just a bad look, that's a defining one. And what followed wasn't just a roster shift, it was a full-scale reset of perception across the entire league. Chicago didn't move like a franchise confused about its direction anymore. It moved like a team that had finally cut out the weight holding it down. The speed of change was unsettling for people who had spent 2 seasons building a narrative that the organization was broken beyond repair. Because suddenly, that broken team started acting like a destination again. Not slowly rebuilding, not cautiously rebranding, immediately attracting high-level talent who didn't need convincing. That kind of turnaround forces a brutal question into the spotlight. If a franchise was truly toxic, why does it become appealing the moment one specific presence disappears? And that's where the conversation stops being about stats, rebounds, or highlights, and starts becoming about something far more uncomfortable: impact beyond the box score. Because teams don't quietly go from unwanted to desirable overnight unless something fundamental inside the structure has changed. And in Chicago's case, that change wasn't subtle, it was visible in every signing, every reaction, every fast decision made by players who suddenly saw opportunity instead of hesitation. Meanwhile, Atlanta entered the picture carrying expectations that looked strong on paper but fragile in reality. A roster with recognizable names, scoring ability, defensive potential, and experience should, in theory, translate into competitiveness. But basketball doesn't operate on theory, it operates on cohesion. And cohesion is built in environments where trust is automatic, communication is fluid, and roles are clear without tension. The concern that immediately surrounded Atlanta wasn't talent, it was alignment. Because when a player arrives with a reputation that divides opinions so sharply across the league, it doesn't just affect media narratives, it affects how other professionals evaluate their own future. That hesitation is exactly what shaped the next wave of decisions across the league. While Chicago found itself suddenly reloaded with experienced, proven contributors willing to commit without delay, Atlanta found itself in a quieter, more uncomfortable position, waiting. Waiting for answers. Waiting for momentum. Waiting for the same kind of immediate buy-in that Chicago unexpectedly received. But that buy-in wasn't showing up in the same way. Because reputations in professional sports don't reset on command, they linger, they circulate, they influence conversations long before contracts are signed. And whether fair or unfair, that perception becomes reality in how teams are built around certain players. Some players elevate environments so significantly that organizations transform around them. Others unintentionally force constant recalibration, where every new addition comes with questions instead of certainty. And that distinction is what separates stable contenders from constantly adjusting rosters. Chicago's rapid influx of talent after its major shakeup wasn't just about opportunity, it was about relief. Players who had options chose certainty. They chose systems they could trust. They chose environments where basketball, not adaptation to internal friction, would define their season. Atlanta, on the other hand, now carries the weight of proving that chemistry can be constructed quickly enough to match expectation. Because talent alone doesn't silence doubt, performance together does. And until that happens, every game becomes more than competition, it becomes evaluation. Not just of skill, but of fit, leadership, and whether the gamble made by the front office was the right one. In that sense, the league didn't just change rosters, it redrew perception maps. Chicago flipped its identity in real time. Atlanta inherited attention it didn't ask for. What makes this entire situation so explosive isn't just the roster movement, it's the way the narrative flipped so violently that it forced everyone watching to pick a side. In professional sports, stories usually evolve slowly.